All right, and welcome into a Friday afternoon breaking news edition of Rocked on Detroit Lions Off the Cuff, reporting some unprecedented news by the NFL. First time in history they've made this big of a jump in the salary cap, where a lot of us have been worried as to just how much were the Lions going to have to play with. And right now I have visions of Brad Holmes is probably somewhere on a mattress full of dollar bills, rolling around, laughing because he's about to do what Brad Holmes does in the offseason and in the draft. And with all of this extra money in his purse, he's going to have some fun. So I'm expecting some big time changes now. This totally changes, I guess, my mood and how I've been feeling. And once we get through the combine, we'll have a little bit more understanding. But I'm thinking now that there's more room for Brad Holmes to get a lot more things done this offseason. Number one target is a cornerback one, in my opinion. He's got the money to do it. Number one target again, defensive end, defensive tackle. Could be Brad Holmes' number one target. Don't know. But in my opinion, I think settling up on the corner is probably going to be the most intriguing option right now, given the price point at what you can get one of the top corners in the league. But I'll digress with that. Let's get into the breaking news about the unprecedented cap jump for the Detroit Lions and the rest of the league. But right now, the NFL has announced on Friday, today, that the salary cap is set at $255.4 million per club. Now, you guys probably remember last April when I said the Lions are great for football business. And what I meant by that is last season in 2022, they had some of the most watched games out of the entire season without even having a primetime game. And I mean, you could consider the last game of the season a flex or whatever, but they didn't have any primetime games. So they didn't really have the big ratings. They had the normal ratings when they play in their 1 p.m. time slot. This last season, with all the primetime games that the Lions had and with the way that they were winning, I mean, not only were tickets at unprecedented levels, but people watching were at unprecedented levels. And I'm going to come back to the statement released by the NFL here in just a moment. But just to go back and look at the conference championship, the Lions were the most watched game, 56.32 million views, beat out KC and Baltimore by right around 1 million views. That's big. You would not expect that, the Lions would be the number one watched team in the Final Four, right? I mean, you wouldn't expect that. I mean, I would like to think that I would just because I'm a big fan. But, given the history, it just hasn't been there. So that's one of the reasons why there's extra money. And there's some other reasons too. But if you go back to the divisional rounds, Lions in Tampa Bay, 37.18 million views. And that was the second highest out of all 4 games that weekend. KC and Buffalo was number one by a wide margin, but you're talking the Buffalo, area. You've got millions and millions and millions of people that live there. Hey, what's happening, everybody in the chat? Thank you for joining me on this Friday afternoon. And you can hate me now. Mackenzie says, let the cooking begin. And yes, it is going to happen. All right, so here we go. Statement by the NFL says the 2024 salary cap will be $255.4 million per club, with an additional $74 million per club payment for player benefits, which includes performance-based pay and benefits for retired players. That's a huge increase. The total 2024 player costs will be roughly $329.4 million per franchise, or more than $10.5 billion league-wide. The NFL said in a statement that the unprecedented $30 million increase per club in this year's salary cap is the result of the full payment of all the amounts that were advanced by the clubs and deferred by the players during the COVID pandemic era, as well as an extraordinary increase in media revenue for the 2024 season. So when you look at the big, broad paintbrush, picture of this, there's a few things here. I didn't realize that the COVID, pandemic, really had a big squeeze on the NFL. But, of course, you don't have people in the seats. You don't have all the regular advertising. Makes sense. So now that all of that money is paid back, the NFL is in a much brighter position. And then when you also look at the fact that this season, they had more advertising revenue deals done and bigger revenue deals done than ever before, it makes sense that they've got a lot of extra money to play with. This is a huge increase. Like we were expecting somewhere between 20 and 24 million. A lot of people were settling about 22 and a half, like right there in the middle. But to jump another 6, 7, $8 million, that's an extra player or two or three, depending on what you're looking at. So the NFL salary cap was 224.8 in 2023, 208 in 0.2 in 2022. So when you look at that increase, you're looking at what a 14 million or $16 million increase year over year, and this year it's doubled. That's insane. All the way up from 182.5 in 2021. So back then you had a bigger increase between 21 and 22, right at about let's see here, 26 million. It looks like. So this is big news. Big news, because now the Lions can go out and target, the players that we're expecting them to be able to target. So I know what you're going to ask me next, and I'll get in there in just a minute to the chat. The Lions are currently sitting number 8 in salary cap, $63.743 million in available cap space. So this is finally updated by Over the Cap. I'm expecting that it is finally accurate. It's been right around 43 million, 46 million-ish over the last month or so, but this is going to be fairly accurate now. I haven't gone in and analyzed, every single player, every single contract or anything, so I'm just going to take their advice for it. They do a much better job than I could ever do. But here's an interesting thing that I looked at, and I was going to do a video about it, but I don't think I'm going to. If the Lions really wanted to shake things up, and that Brad Holmes said that things are going to get kind of wild or crazy or whatever he had said at his press conference, does anybody realize that if they did trade Jared Goff, or if they did, well, you wouldn't cut him, but if you did trade him, that the Lions would save $27 million this season? Dead cap of $5 million flat. So again, it just goes to show, I'm not saying that's going to happen. It just goes to show the type of contracts and the way that this team, puts things together. Memory serves me correct, I hope, that when Jared Goff joined the Lions, they redid his contract. I think that they rewrote it a little bit. So I'm hoping that something crazy like that doesn't happen. I don't think the Lions head back to, where they were this last season if they move on from Goff for whatever reason. But just big numbers. I mean, they could get to over $100 million in cap space if they wanted to. Now, I'm going to do a video probably here in a couple days about the pending moves that are probably going to happen and what that looks like for the Lions. And these are going to be players that are not free agents. They're going to be players that are currently under contract, and see exactly where the Lions could end up before free agency starts. So, all right, let's see who's all in the chat. What kind of questions do we have? What kind of statements how excited are you guys right now that the Lions just gained over $20 million in cap space overnight? So welcome in Braylon Dennis, Tracy, El Tori, Demigod 313, Justin G, Southwest Lion 26, Steve K, the Shadow Viper 619. Everybody as usual joining in. So let's see what we got in here. Justin G says, "Oh, I didn't know you were live. I've been missing them lately and catching the rewatch. Feeling better? Yes, I've been doing great now for a couple weeks. I mean, is what it is. Got to battle everything in life. But yes, I'm feeling better, and I appreciate you asking." Braylon Dennis says, "It is time to splurge, Brad." Like I said, I've got these visions running through my head right now. The Brad Holmes is just rolling through dollars somewhere. He's just rolling on the floor. He's got a cash machine. He's doing something. Steve K says, "With this new cap, what is your dream free agent pickup?" So I'm still sticking with corner, like Jalen Johnson, L'Jarius Sneed, a second tier guy, but kind of middle tier money, Justin Blackman. But look, if the Lions really want to make a big difference this season, they have to shore up two positions. And I'm going to stick with that. They have to shore up two positions. And that is defensive. Well, it's three, but they need two impact players. Let's say that defensive tackle, defensive end on the right side, and a right cornerback. So starting cornerback and move Sutton to number 2. That's what I would do if I was the GM, but I'm not the GM. But those are the positions that I feel like they have to shore up. Our offense is solid. We're returning everybody that, had a great season for us. So I don't think that we're really going to fall off on the offensive side of the ball. Yes, we have a couple of unanswered questions on the offensive line, but I do believe that there are players both in free agency and in this draft that are plug and play. And the Lions shouldn't skip a beat on the offensive line. As long as our three, main guys, Ragnow, Decker, and Penei Sewell, stay healthy this season, we'll be just fine. I think that for a minute there, we saw a couple of bad games when Jonah was out. And that was because we have bad depth. Our depth was terrible. And we saw it the season before. When guys were coming in to substitute, and we're into our 10th different rotation or formation, if you will, they played terribly at times. So we have to find somebody that can come in and play. And there's nothing wrong with having to sit a really good player. There's nothing wrong with that. I'd rather have guys that are super good that you're overpaying a little bit, sitting on the bench, ready to go, when their time is called and they can go in and produce like, nothing changes. Ben Stewart says huge boost. Demigod 313 says Lions need to clear at least $40 million by extending Decker, Goff, and St. Brown, then releasing Kaminsky, Barnes, Harris, and a few other players. So quick note on that comment. Here's what I would say. I don't think that they're going to mess with Decker. I don't think that Decker's going to be with us after this contract. I think this year and next year are his last 2 seasons, if memory serves me correct. He has 2 more. I think Ragnow has 3 more, potentially. St. Brown, I believe, will get a deal done. Barnes, I don't think that he needs to go anywhere. He was actually playing pretty well there towards the end. And matter of fact, didn't he pick off Mayfield in the second playoff game? I think he did. Charles Harris and Will Harris, I believe what you're saying there. I believe both of them are on the way out. And then Kaminsky, that's a tough one because that guy, he is blue and silver all day, every day. Perfect Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell guy. I've got to come up with a moniker, for the Brad Holmes, Dan Campbell guy. I got to figure something out. I'm going to come up with a name because it's getting a little played out saying those names all the time. But I see us clearing $40 million. I think that's a potential. The minute you extend Goff, he could take, just a signing bonus kind of salary this year with a little bit of salary mixed in. He could be, at 30 million this year or lower. He could be where he was supposed to be anyway or lower. That's a great possibility. You're going to pay for it on the back end, though. That's the problem. Southwest Line 26 says, I would take care of the core first. I'm a big proponent of that. I believe you build the trenches always. Sean Rounds, new name. Welcome in today. Apologize if you've been here before and I haven't seen you. So welcome to Rockdown Detroit Lions. Says, does this mean that there is a possibility of Jonah Jackson with the extra money? Good question. Here's what I would say initially. Brad Holmes said he does not want to mess with this offensive line, right? He does not want to shake it up, if you will. He wants to try to keep it together as best as he can. So that means you're going to overpay a little bit on Glasgow, but I think he's worth every penny based on what he made last year and how he performed. He way overperformed compared to Jonah Jackson. Jonah didn't have the greatest season. Yes, he is a very solid guard, left guard. But do you want to pay him $12, $13, $14 million a season, knowing that, he was banged up a little bit and wouldn't play? He wasn't like overly hurt and couldn't play. I kind of question that a little bit. And that's big money for a left guard. Some of these left guards are making, $15, $18 million a year. And if he's asking anywhere near that, no way. You could probably pick up Robert Hunt for $12 million a year, and he's a much better guard than Jonah Jackson is. So I would say the jury is still out on Jonah. The last report that I read is they're pretty far apart in contract terms. So if that's the case, if they're that far apart right now, I don't see anything happening until free agency. And that's where I believe someone's going to overpay for Jonah Jackson. Brett says, when do we talk Hendon Hooker? Who is dynamic? I think we've always talked about Hendon. He's going to be a great backup this season, and he's going to continue to be a great backup as long as Jared Goff is our number one. But I am super excited to see Hendon Hooker in action this season. I really am. I mean, camp this year is going to be a different level of training camp when, we're going to have a very dynamic quarterback, like you say, to your point now, as our backup. We have never had a backup quarterback this good. And it's going to be exciting to watch, and it's going to give our team a different look. So our defense is finally going to have somebody to chase around, like they're a Jalen Hurts or somebody else, and get that extra work in. The good news is Justin Fields will no longer be a Bear. I've been reporting on this for well over a month or two now, that I expected the Bears to move on from Justin, and it looks like it's going to be a possibility. Nothing concrete yet. So that takes one tough equation out of, this picture, but replacing him with Caleb Williams is going to put us right back into it. So, Demigod 313 says, also, the Lions need good depth just in case something happens to Hutchinson or whoever the second best player on defense is. And I agree with that. You're only as good as your depth, right? I'm pretty sure that was Dan Campbell that said that. But it's something I've always believed in too, and I think Brad Holmes has expressed that to us throughout many of his press conferences, that year over year, you want to do what? Upgrade, get better, right? You overall, you want to improve your team dynamic. And they do that through a multitude of facets, whether it's extending the culture, and building the culture and in establishing the identity. It seems like they kind of take on this new identity every season. I don't know if you guys have noticed it. I mean, grit has always kind of been around. But it seems like they come up with this new slogan or something every year to take on that identity. This last season, it was like it started as the villains. And then it kind of molded into, all grit. I don't know. What's it going to be in 2024? So they do it through a multitude of facets, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to be part of. So the depth is very important, and that's part of that whole process. Your second tier guys, if you can have a mixture of starters that would be starters on other teams, then you don't have that big drop off when you have to exchange players, offensively or defensively. If someone goes down, you've got someone that can pick right up behind them, might have a different, bag of skills, or utilize a different bag of tools, but they still get the job done. And that's what I'm looking for Brad to do. And that's why I've kind of been riding that train of, I don't see Brad really spending huge money on anyone in particular, other than those two positions. And I think that those two positions are two areas of the defense are where he's going to spend the most. I still think that this draft falls exactly where Brad wants to build, and that is the trenches, and primarily the offensive side of the ball. There's really good options for centers and guards in the middle of this draft that are going to land where the Detroit Lions are going to have an opportunity. And I know they're unsexy picks, right? But you need them. And you guys have seen this last season, ladies too, just how beautiful an offensive line is. It is the most unrecognized positional group in the league, but they do the dirtiest work. And without them, this team doesn't do what we do. So that's where I'm looking for him to make his biggest advancements this season. So Braylon Dennis says, get Danielle Hunter now. Well, I would love to. It's not quite March 13th, but we'll start hearing some rumors beginning on March 10th at midnight. I promise you, I probably won't sleep much during those few days, because I'm going to be watching the wires and making sure that we get every bit of breaking news out just as fast as we can. Maybe I'll even have my press pass by then. Well, we'll see. Debbie got 313 says CJGJ on a 2-year, $25 million deal. Woo, doggy. What is that? Did that just come out, or is that what you're asking for? Clarify that for me. I haven't seen anything. So you must just be guessing because I don't think he's going to get that much. So assuming that that deal hasn't happened, which would be incredible news today, I don't think that that's going to happen. I think that's a little bit too much. I mean, he didn't do anything last year to show us that he's a $12 million guy. Um, Tracy says, do you think that they give CJ? Okay, I see where this is coming now. CJ a contract now of some sort, maybe 2 years. So I'm a mixed bag, and I know I use that term a lot, but I am mixed on CJ Gardner because the demigod's point, if he does want 2 years, 25 million, no way. Too much money. You can go get a top tier safety in the league right now for less than that. I went over a couple of them last week, and I'll be reviewing a few more. But if you look at this draft, it may not have the best cornerback options, later in the rounds, but it has a bevy of really good safeties that are going to be right there in the second, maybe early in the third, that I believe Brian Branch type plug and play can come in and play very well. And I think that Brian Branch is going to have an incredible second season. What we've seen out of him this last year, and then he kind of got banged up. I think it was week 6, 7. He kind of wasn't the same after that, but he still played very well. So I'm expecting huge things out of him, and we need to add another one because our defensive back room rolled with, I believe, 5 safeties and 6 DBs to start the season, and most teams have some sort of an equation of 10. So I'm expecting that they're going to ramp up here in the draft, and they're going to also have to bring some guys in free agency. But I'm not expecting a bunch of expensive guys. And who knows, Brad Kashakas, he could go pluck one of the best safeties right now, that's available to get signed. But we'll see what happens, come free agency. Steve K says CJGJ is not worth more than 6 to 8 million. That's the boat that I'm into. I'm rolling with you, Steve. I would say 8 is my ceiling on him, but I wouldn't be mad at 8 million. Not at all. I think that 8 million is a steal, but I think that that's where he's going to want a 2-year deal. And he's probably going to want, a lot of options within that deal that say, hey, if I get, X amount of picks, or I get, $500K for every interception, or, I get an extra 250 for, anything over 50 tackles, who knows? And I'm just throwing numbers out there. This is nothing concrete. Demigod says, my only hope, excuse me, is Gilmore gets his chance to compete for that number 1 cornerback spot if the Lions can't find one in free agency. Well, there's 3 in free agency that I would take in a heartbeat. As far as Gilmore being a number 1, that's a big jump. Like going from never playing to number 1 that'd be a huge jump. So I would say he's got a lot of work in front of him, to take that spot from Cam Sutton. I don't know if that one's possible, but I do like him a lot. And I felt that he played with, a lot of tenacity. But we also have to remember it was preseason, and you're not seeing the number 1s, going up against number 1s. You're seeing 2s and 3s going up against 2s and 3s. And sometimes it clouds your vision a little bit on just how good they really are. Gilmore can't be any worse than Sutton, Jacobs, and anybody else they ever had. Good point, Demigod. If you watched the video the other day where I went over Steve Nelson, so Steve Nelson is a great option. We're not talking top tier guys, but he's got really good stats, and his passer rating against was, I think it was 69.1. So when you're talking a guy that 8 years experience, you bring somebody like that in, and you're shoring up your cornerback room right away. But again, it's somebody that doesn't have to start. He doesn't have to be a number 1 or a number 2. He can just be a really good backup in the sub packages. So it's guys like that I see joining this team. And I'm expecting that Brad Holmes is going to do something, whether it's draft or free agency, to find us a lockdown corner, that can hold his own on an island and play man press. We've got enough guys that play off man. We need somebody to get up and jam these guys. So look, it's fun, right? I mean, the Lions, I mean, I wish I had a checkbook with all this cash available where I could go out and just sign guys to a team. I mean, that's got to be the funnest part of the year is going through this and working out all the deals and going through all the play. I'm sure it's stressful, a lot of sleepless nights for these guys, but it's got to be a lot of fun looking at how you can assemble, your team and all of the thoughts that go into it. And how, last season I said, man, that's like the scariest DB room on paper. But that's all it ended up being was paper because two of the guys didn't really play. CJ Gardner played a little bit, but Mosley didn't do anything. So we never got to realize what, was in front of us, what options, or where this defensive back room could have ended up. They could have been the catalyst for, an extra win. And we get the 1 seed and then it's the third game and, it's at home during the playoffs. And next thing you know, we're in the Super Bowl. It only took one more game. That's all it took. And the season before, it only took one more game. So that's how we have to approach this season is year over year, we have to get better, but we have to win one more game than we were supposed to. We have to win one more game than we have to, right? Or that we should, because it's that one game that separated us both seasons from getting to where we wanted to get. In 2022, we just wanted to make the playoffs. Now, some people, they wanted to go to Super Bowl every year. Every team feels that way. But for me, being realistic, I'm like, just make the playoffs. Just get us there. The second or this third season, it was have to win the NFC North, have to get a playoff win. Anything after that is a bonus. But that one extra win put us in the Super Bowl. And that one extra win in 22 would have put us in the playoffs. So that's how I look at it. Kurt Hartshorn says Cam Sutton isn't the worst corner either. He and Stephen Gilmore would be a quality set of corners. Well, I think we're going to see it this spring and summer. All throughout camp, we'll see what these guys have. Andrew Isham says, I would bring back Josh Reynolds for a 2-year deal at $3 to $5 million a year. I think that's a quality deal. I do. I don't know that Josh Reynolds is going to really go out and seek a ton of money in free agency. But that's the funny part about being a professional athlete. It's, when teams need you, they overpay for your services. And if Josh Reynolds, gets flirty with some teams, someone might pull him away and overpay him. He hasn't had terrible seasons. I think that he's done just fine with what he's been paid to do and how he's produced. But it's that connection between him and Jared Goff that's hard to walk away from. It's that security blanket for Jared Goff. And I know that everyone's going to point the fingers at a couple of drops. It happens, I wish those drops would have happened in the regular season. But they didn't. They happened at, the most critical time. And if they did happen in the regular season, well, maybe we lose that game and don't even make it to the playoffs or win the NFC North. Who knows? So everything happens for a reason at some point. Shadow Viper 619 says, could be a cheap option for a number 1 cornerback. He's only 26, so he's pretty young. Who are we talking about? Oh, Bryce Hall from the Jets. I haven't looked into him. I honestly don't know much about Bryce Hall. Sean Round says Kendall Fuller can be a number 1 cornerback. He certainly can. And I believe he's listed as the number 4 cornerback free agent right now. But when I looked into him, I want to say his passer rating against was pretty bad, like 101 or something like that. So I want to see guys below 90, below 80 is pretty elite. But if we can get some guys that are below 90, because all of our corners were 100 plus. Kendall Vildor was like 147. I think Cam Sutton was 108. Steven Nelson, though, the guy that I like from the Houston Texans, 69.1. Those are the types of numbers you need. And darn well they weren't throwing at Derek Stingley all day. So he was getting the brunt of, the passes thrown his way. And that's why I looked at him and targeted him as an option for the Lions. And I'm going to keep driving it until Brad Holmes picks it up and does something with it, right? Maybe it's an option in his eyes. Maybe it's not. I'm sure he'll find the right guy that makes the most sense at the end of the day. Southwest Line 26 says, I'm very interested to see what kind of an impact the new coach, Tyrell Williams, will have on the defensive line. I think he's going to be a big help. I hope so. There's a video that I did a few months ago. Let me see if I still have this pulled up. And I was talking about just that issue. Here you go, right here. Missing piece, D-line derailed. Go check it out. It's not my best work. It was before I had, all of the podcasting equipment. But what I was talking about in the video is the big lapse from Todd Wash and how great the defensive line really played in 2021. In 21 or 22, and the big drop in 23. So Todd Wash went to the Panthers. He followed along with, a couple other people from the Lions, and Deuce Staley being one of them, which they're all gone now. They're all fired after one season. And there was a huge drop off in the way that this defensive front was, doing their job. Pressure, great. But there was some big deficiencies, in other areas. But the run game, they did well in. So I have to believe that John Scott had a little bit to do with the run game and how well this defense played against it. But something was missing somewhere. Or like we spoke about yesterday morning, was he just a scapegoat? Aaron Glenn seems to get a pass for a lot of things that have gone on, and he is the leader of the defense. He is the leader of every coach underneath him on the defense. So he is responsible for how these guys coach, what they teach, how they teach it, and making sure that it gets done. And if it's not getting done, then I think that the first person you have to look at is your leader. And is there something that he's not doing? We're going to find out this year because now, again, we have new coaches. And as Derek said the other day, you can't continue, to roll through coaches. The only thing that, that I would say to that, is one, I echo that sentiment. I agree with that statement. But there's a couple of things that have stayed consistent. Head coach, offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator. Those are the three coaches that we can't roll through, right? You just can't roll dice every other year and bring in new coaching staff like that. That's why teams don't succeed. If you can keep your top coaches the same, even though you're having a bad season or two, you stick with it and you're going to end up on the other side at some point. Now, I'm not saying you go 4 or 5 straight years of losing and then you finally, say, whatever, we've got to move on. No, I think that you need to give every set of coaches 4 years minimum, 5 years at the most, to see what they have, because it's building the culture, the identity, it's the continuity, it's the chemistry, it's everything. But if you continually change it up and change the scheme, your team falls backwards. If they had to come in this year and implement a new offensive system and or a new defensive system or both, very difficult for this team to head back to the playoffs. Guarantee you. And that's what you see happening. I mean, go check it, right? What happens to every Super Bowl team? They hardly ever get back. Kansas City, first back-to-back team that's done it, and I can't remember how many years. It's been a while. But they usually hardly ever get back even to the playoffs in most seasons. For the large majority of Super Bowl winning teams, they don't even go back to the playoffs the next year. Some of them drop off the cliff big time. And that's because why? Their coaches get plucked. They go move up. They move on to coordinator positions, head coaching positions. Their players scatter, like bugs. I mean, they just scattered to go wherever the money is because it's a big payday now. So it's hard to keep it all together, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And the Lions are kind of on that brink right now where their coaches are getting looked at and their players are getting looked at, but even more so, our players want to come to Detroit. So we're in a very unique situation. It's great that we're keeping things together because this team will be that much better now in the 3rd season of Ben Johnson's offense and the 4th season of Aaron Glenn's defense. And for all the guys that have been here since day one, they're going to be that much better because of it. So the littler coaches, and I don't mean that negatively, but the guys that are a little bit lower on the totem pole, some of those guys you can kind of get away with, losing throughout the year. But I guess I would argue the fact that losing a defensive line coach is pretty important. And I think that's exactly what Derek was trying to say is, these are important guys that, you're having difficulty, um, with the defensive line. And was it really John Scott? Was it Aaron Glenn? Do they deserve an extra opportunity, or were they just masking, the issues with Aaron Glenn? So Shadow Viper 619 says PFF has an overall rating of 66.4 for the last season. I just looked. Who was that for? Why should you sign a 29-year-old Josh Reynolds to a 2-year deal? Well, I mean, he's not incredibly old. He's only 29. A lot of these receivers. I mean, what's Mike Evans? 30? I think Mike Evans is 30, and he's looking for a 3-4 year deal. And he's also Mike Evans, but I guess to, give you, an option there that you would compare it to, it's, a lot of guys sign big deals when they're a little bit older. I don't necessarily agree with it, but Ezra Gray says Sneed, pay St. Brown 23 mil. Bye-bye to CJ. Bring Mosley to approve it 1-year deal, 4 mil. Hunter on a 3-year, 27 mil. Man, I would not be bringing Mosley back. That's 2 ACLs. He won't be ready till at least week 5 again. That's not for me. I mean, if he wanted to come sit on the bench for league minimum and not be ready to go back until week 8 and pretty much just be there on the practice squad as, just a guy, just hanging out, getting healthy, then I would do it. But I don't see him really getting signed by anybody right now. 2 ACLs is a big deal. So, Shadow Viper, who are we talking about? Overall rating of 66.4. Demigod 313 says Josh Reynolds has to go. I can't forgive him because of the camera. Caught him laughing about one of those 4th down drops. I don't want a guy who thinks that's funny. I want a dog. I never saw that. And I doubt he was laughing. I don't know. I guess I've laughed sometimes when I'm upset, kind of like, you got to be kidding me. Like, this just happened again kind of laugh. But anyway, Southwest Line 26 says Hunter will get more than that with the higher cap. 27 mil. I don't think he gets more than 27 mil. I don't. He'll get 27 mil per, if that's what you're saying there, Ezra Gray. 27 per. All right. Well, hey, I think that's it for today. I just wanted to jump in and break the news. Okay, you're talking about Bryce Hall. Just kind of looking for depth. Yeah, that's kind of a tough number. 66.4 is pretty low, unless you're talking about passer rating. Passer rating against, that'd be a great number. So, hey, I just wanted to break the news to everybody tonight or this afternoon that the Lions have a big bump in pay, salary cap that they're going to be able to spread around now in free agency. Now, of course, every team is realizing the benefits of this cap. And the only question that I'm going to leave everybody with is this. I understand what the NFL is doing and where, they're saying that this extra money is coming from. But the biggest question I have is you have a lot of teams that are in cap purgatory. And this is really going to help a lot of those teams. So does the NFL ever take that into account when they look at some of these teams that are just never going to get back to clearing zeros? And they say, let's try to help them out a little bit. I know it doesn't seem like much, but, $8 million is almost half your rookie class, depending on how many draft picks you have. And that's about what they did. They threw in an extra about 8 to 10 million this year. And that's a big deal. So I'm looking for Brad Holmes to go out and spend some money. I don't think that he's going to be, overly spendy, if you will. I don't think that he's just going to spend to spend. I think that he'll make the right decisions, the guys that make perfect sense for this team. And I do think that the Lions are going to really benefit now from the extra money that they're going to have. So, all right. Tracy says, go check out Stiggers and get back with us on your thoughts. I am doing one right now on Dwight McLaughlin. Somebody put that in the chat or something to have me take a look at him. So Dwight McLaughlin will be coming up probably tomorrow. And then tonight, I'm going to do a short 1 hour show. Maybe we'll do some more live PFF mock draft stuff. I'm not real sure what I'm going to plan for tonight, but join me back tonight, 8:30. And we'll be doing Rock Down Podcast off the cuff tonight, 1 hour long, talking about free agency. Might have some more information between now and then. We'll see. But I appreciate all of you guys for joining in today and watching this episode of Brad Has Money, and he's going to spend it. All right, y'all. We'll see y'all later. Take care. Bye-bye.